Hello and welcome to In Case You Missed It Wrestling. This is the first official episode, and I am your host, Blackhawk. We're going to be covering Raw on Netflix today. The goal of this podcast is to cover everything that happened last week so you can be up to date when you watch this week, or if you just can't fit that into your schedule or don't have a Netflix account, this is a great way to keep up with what's going on in the WWE space on Raw. But we have a lot to get into, so let's get started with Raw on Netflix. Just a couple things before we really get into the action of the episode. There was a lot of discourse about whether this episode was good or it was kind of trash. And I think it really wasn't that bad. I think a lot of people were really mad because it was built up like a PLE, and it just wasn't. It was a regular Monday Night Raw with one less match than we usually get. So it was interesting. The matches definitely got the PLE treatment where they were all at least around 20 minutes, and there wasn't a ton of backstage segments. So it definitely had sort of the feel of a PLE, but it was a pretty big ad for Netflix. There was a lot of celebrity shots. They didn't do a ton of what they would normally do on Raw. And it made sense because you're on a new platform. You're now in front of the eyes of millions and millions and millions of more people that would have never ever thought to tune into Monday Night Raw. And you kind of got to give them a pilot episode. Kind of got to give them a, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. These are our people. This is what you want to watch. This is why you want to watch. This is what you can expect from the future. And a lot of people didn't like that. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, but they definitely cut some stories, not short, but definitely didn't mention things. There was a lot of just kind of odd crowd work and really gearing towards Netflix. Netflix. They kept saying Netflix a lot. Everybody that came out and did a promo mentioned Netflix, which, I mean, it's a huge deal. I get it. It's a huge deal, but it definitely felt like everything was about Netflix. But I still don't think this episode was as bad as people say. I think it was a pretty decent episode. Like if this would have aired, on USA, I think we all would have been pretty happy with it. But now that it's on Netflix and they're doing all this extra stuff, it's I don't know. I think people really got their hopes up for a very, very good, a very PLE style Raw and weren't delivered that, and it made them mad. I think this was fine. I thought this episode was fine. This is kind of what I expected. I didn't really expect the PLE treatment for Raw because they're going to expect that every single week. And WWE is not going to give us that every single week. We're going to have, regular Raw episodes. Everything's not going to feel like a PLE. But this one had to be big. It had to be, blown out of proportion. All the matches needed to take time and really work through things, and it was good. I just don't understand why people hate this so much. But I digress. I thought it was good. The format structure we can probably expect for the next few weeks. I don't know how long we will be looking at that, but we did only get 4 matches. We'll go over those. But I know for next week they have only announced for 4 matches, and I don't know if they're adding anything else. I am pre-recording this, so we'll see what happens. I am pretty excited about next week, though. I do want to see what carries over and what is kind of cut from that pilot episode on Netflix. But let's get into the actual episode itself. Triple H will start after a video package that, if you've been on social media, you probably saw. It was fantastic, actually. I really enjoyed watching it, and it hyped me up for the Raw premiere. And they showed it on like a big screen around the ring. It looked pretty cool. It was pretty well done. Really, really cool production. Triple H was in the middle of it. They dropped the screen, and Triple H, welcomes everybody to Raw, welcomes to the Netflix era. Kind of goes over a few things. Nothing really important happened during the promo, but it was good. They did light off fireworks. It looked like they blew up right in front of Triple H. And then he just disappeared. So he might he might have gotten hit. But yeah, we move on. The Rock would come out right after. But not as the final boss. That is a big note and a big detractor for a lot of people from this was that The Rock came out as the High Chief, not as the final boss, which in reality he is the High Chief, but they did nothing to push the final boss story forward. He would talk about the WWE and the Netflix and the history of watching WWE, talking about how, it used to be when he was a kid, the only way you could do it is wait till Saturdays or buy a ticket. And now you can watch it anytime you want, which I think is great. It's awesome. And I'm so glad we live in this era where we can enjoy WWE whenever we want. He surprisingly shouted out Cody Rhodes, saying that he put the company on his back, which he has. But that's not something that the final boss probably would have done. So we're getting The Rock as Dwayne Johnson. We're getting The Rock as the people watching Netflix regularly would know The Rock as. We're getting actor Rock. We're getting superstar Rock. We're getting TKO board member Rock. It's not the final boss. And that's fine because if you haven't been watching since Mania or didn't even watch Mania, you don't know anything about the final boss. And you would be asking a lot of questions about why is he the final boss? Now, I think we'll get into that later because on NXT, and we'll talk about this tomorrow on the NXT episode, he did call himself the final boss. So this isn't something that they're erasing completely. This is something that I think just for this episode, maybe just for now, we're kind of just putting a hold on, letting people get used to the new show, letting people get into the show, and then maybe throwing that final boss, some of these long-term stories in there and making sense of things. But yeah, he talked about, his time with the WWE and all that. It was a good promo. It was pretty good. His promos seemed to be long-winded. It was about 15, 20 minutes. It was a long time. But we would move directly in to the Roman versus Solo tribal combat right after that. And this was a lot faster paced than the Roman matches we've been used to. It was actually fun to watch. The last couple of Roman matches that I've watched have kind of been trash. And if you've watched some of my YouTube videos, you know that this one was good. Not match of the night quality good, but it was good. They had a lot of moments where the crowd would kind of pull out and they would pull them right back in, just yank that chain back. And this was, tribal combat. We would get the common tribal combat things where one side's people would run out, the other side's people would come out. So, it average tribal combat match for the Ulafala this time, though. And we would see Roman come away with the Ulafala after multiple interferences from Jacob and Tamatanga, who would be stopped by Sammy and Jimmy. And surprisingly, I didn't expect this one, but Kevin Owens came out and stunned Roman. And Cody would come out to help Roman and take Kevin out. But yeah, it was good. It was good. I didn't think this was a bad match at all. This is probably, like I said, this is probably the best Roman match we've gotten since Mania. And he is finally now the tribal chief. He is the top dog once again. There's not much that's been said about what's going to happen post Raw. We don't really know anything at all. We just know Roman's in charge. Roman has the Ulafala now. We'll just have to see what happens. Surprisingly, as well, The Rock comes out and gives the Ulafala to Roman and hugs him and congratulates him, which is something probably didn't expect to see after the last time The Rock showed up. And I think this is another one of those things where people were mad about because it kind of diminishes some of the work that The Rock has done in previous months. But like, he didn't really do anything. So people were speculating that he was behind Solo and all this, and none of that was ever confirmed. And so WWE could do something like this without ruining that story. And we might see something like that in the future. Just like I said with, NXT, he did mention he was still the final boss. But for this, we end on a shot of Roman walking out with the Ulafala with Paul Heyman, conquering Solo Sikoa, and is the rightful tribal chief. We would also get a promo for the Royal Rumble for 2026, which is insane to get a promo for 2026 Royal Rumble when we haven't had the 2025 Royal Rumble. But I guess I got to start advertising and letting people know it is in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. They are moving the show to Saudi next year. Not excited about that. I'm just not excited about the Saudi shows. I don't know. They're really hit and miss. Sometimes they're super good, and sometimes the crowd's not good. I think it's weird. They have to do a lot of extra stuff for the Saudi shows, and it's kind of annoying. And I know they're locked into a deal for a couple years, and will probably, unfortunately, end up with a Mania in Riyadh or somewhere else in Saudi, which I'm not looking forward to. But it's bound to happen with the with the contract they have with Saudi Arabia. But moving on, John Cena would make his appearance. He talks about how much LA has meant to him as a wrestler. He trained there. He learned how to wrestle there. He won his first championship there. He lived, blocks away from the stadium they were in that night. And so LA is a pivotal part of his wrestling career. And he wanted to say thank you to them. This is what his, retirement tour is all about, is saying thank you to the people and the places that have meant so much to him in his career. He mentions the 17th World Championship to hold that record. And he starts kind of getting down. He starts talking about how it probably won't happen. Probably won't happen. He'd have to do all this stuff. He's on a 2,446 day losing streak, technically, which is huge. Probably the biggest the WWE's ever had since they got rid of jobbers. But he does come back and say the best way to do it is to win the Rumble, and announces and declares he will win the Rumble. So I'm pretty excited for the now. I was excited before, but I really kind of hope John Cena wins. I don't have anybody else on the main roster that I would really care to see win the Rumble. I think there's some really good options, don't get me wrong, but Cena is probably the best option. We would then get a video package about Logan Paul. He is potentially becoming full-time. I think this is what this means. He is kind of pushing other things away, and he's coming in to be a full-time wrestler. I don't know what that looks like for him. I know he's got his toes in a lot of different spaces. So we will have to see what that does. He will be part of the Raw brand. All right, sure. I'm not a huge fan of Logan Paul. His matches are great, but it's because they work on them for months on end. I'm very interested to see what he will look like week to week. I think he's got the athletic ability. He's definitely got the character work down, the mic work down. But can he put together a match, on a week to week basis? And that's something that we'll have to see coming up soon. Moving into Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley. They say this is the last time they will be doing this. I don't believe them. Just because of how the women's roster is structured right now. I think we'll see Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan, going to war again, which I'm not complaining about. I think it's great. I don't mind that. I'd like to watch it again. I just would rather it not be for the title, right? I would rather it not be centered around the title and Dom and Judgment Day, and I'd rather them have like a feud because they want to fight each other instead of she stole my stuff. So I'm trying to get it back. And again, that's one of those things. If you watch the channel for a while, you know my thoughts on that. I've had multiple videos on this. But you know, Liv will come out, Raquel and Dom. None of the rest of the Judgment Day, which I thought was interesting. Just Raquel and Dom. Rhea would come up by herself. It's probably the best match that they've had out of, you know, all the matches they've done. This one was arguably the best one. It really showed strengths out of both sides. Really just kept you on your toes, kept you watching. They did a really good job of that. Some better than others. This one was good. You know, obviously we would have Dom and Raquel interfere. But interestingly enough, to me at least, they did not interfere that much. They talked the whole time, but didn't do anything to actually really help Liv other than the one moment, and Liv would lose. Rhea Ripley is now the women's world champion, which claps, claps, claps. Thank you, Lord. I am so happy about that because I think that Rhea can put on better matches than Liv in a long run. Not in just like, I think she should be champion because I prefer Rhea over Liv. I actually like both of them a lot. But I think Rhea has the capacity to put on better matches with, you know, people like Io Sky, some of these women from NXT that should be getting call-ups pretty soon. I think Rhea can do more with the title than Liv could. But we'd get a funny little segment at the end of the match. Rhea is celebrating. Dom would try to get in her good graces once again, and she would kick him in the balls and then hit him with a riptide. Match was good. If you can't watch the whole thing and really just want to get a match in, this match might not be it. But it was still good. If you got time to watch more than one, I would probably turn this one on. I think this one was good. If you can watch 3 out of the 4, this is definitely one of those 3 you should watch. We would also get a Taker appearance after Rhea would make her way back up to the front. This felt really awkward. I don't think they really planned it out super well. But Taker would come out on his bike as the American BA. I said this podcast was clean, so I don't know if I can say that on here. But we're just going to say BA just to cover my bases. I don't want to get anything taken down or get in trouble for that. But he would make a tour around the ring, come out, you know, hit him with the like that. Rhea would join him. It was a cool moment. It really was. I guess that's the gimmick he's going with now, which is much better for him as a person now. We don't see, you know, Dead Man Taker anymore. We probably see the American BA more than anything in things that he does and his own podcast, like his own appearances. He looks, dresses, and feels more like the American BA. So probably better that they make that defining line that this is who he is now. But nonetheless, cool segment. Took about 5 minutes. He didn't say anything. He just rode out on his bike and then rode out. But they would move to a backstage segment with Adam Pearce and Kathy Kelly. Bailey is talking to Adam Pearce. We might be seeing her on Raw very soon. There's nothing been set in stone, nothing been said since this moment, but Bailey could be making her way off of SmackDown onto Monday Night Raw. Chad Gable would interrupt anything Kathy Kelly wanted to ask Adam Pearce before she could ask Adam Pearce. Says he wants to dispel the rumors that he struggles with luchadors because they have been fighting the LWO for God knows how long. There's only a handful of factions in the WWE, so it makes sense. But he wants to dispel the rumors that he cannot wrestle luchadors. Tells him to find the best luchador and send him his way. They've been teasing Penta for a while now. I believe tonight we will get to see Penta debut against Chad Gable, which I think could be a great match. Now, this is speculation. They haven't said anything official yet. They're going to keep it under wraps until episode airs, obviously. But I think this is the best way to introduce Penta to the WWE universe because he can wrestle, he can grapple, he can fly, he can do whatever he needs to do to, you know, make it through the match. If you've watched his Lucha Underground stuff, you know that. And pairing him up with Chad Gable, I think is really good. I think it'll be able to show that he can do all these things on the mat. and Chad can take a beating, and we know Pinto loves to give out beatings. Move on to Travis Scott would make an appearance. He would smoke a blunt live on television, live on Netflix. I was told that the WWE did not approve of that. They did not know about that, so they could not disapprove or approve of it. But it happened. Came out with a hardcore title on his shoulder. It was cool. It was cool. You know, he's got the WrestleMania theme this year. He's also doing the Raw theme this year. So, you know, big props to him. He comes out before Jey Uso, and then Jey Uso would quickly follow. They would come down on the ring together, you know, do the yeet. It was a good time. Looked like a lot of people were having fun. You know, they would do more celebrity shots throughout the crowd, watching, you know, the celebrities get involved, just showing these people that are in attendance. You know, Jey Uso's entrance is always fun. It's always exciting. It's a huge pop every time. People love him. I love him. Crowd loves him. Drew would make his entrance and almost kill a crowd. He still got cheers, obviously, but they were not nearly as excited to see him as they were Jay. Now, when I said earlier, if you can only watch 3 out of the 4 matches, this is the one match of the night that you can skip forward and not really miss anything. This is part of Drew fighting through the OG bloodline because they've cost him, you know, this and that here and there. The last couple of years, cost him a championship. You know, here, keep going. Just, you could keep naming things left and right because Drew likes to say that people cost him a lot of stuff. So this match was average. This match was painfully average. They had a lot of near falls, like almost too many. They hit each other with every big crowd pop move they had. It was just all right. It was the only match of the night where I wasn't fully invested. I think the storyline with Drew could be really good. We know that Jay is a main event talent. I think it was just all right. I don't think it lived up to the hype that they might have built this up to be. But, you know, it is what it is. The ending was super interesting, though. It wasn't like a finisher pin. It was Jay rolled him up in a crucifix and just pinned him that way, which was crazy. It was a surprise pin. You don't see that very often nowadays, and I hope they start bringing that back because that was cool. I thought the match was going to go on for another 5 minutes at least, or Drew was getting ready to hit a Claymore, and he was just going to hit the Claymore, and that would be it. But that was exciting and, you know, changed the way I thought the match would end. We'll probably see him face off again because, you know, Drew wants to win, obviously. Probably won't be, you know, next couple weeks. We'll probably see it further down the line, but we will see Drew McIntyre and Jey Uso face off again. We will only get 2 backstage segments that night. One with Adam Pearce, obviously, and then this one where they kind of do a handful of different things. So we're going to just kind of run over what they did. Start with a Gunther video. Gunther talking about how he is the prize champion. He is where dreams go to die because he is the top champion. He is, you know, the best. And it's hard to disagree with him. This championship run hasn't been the best, but it is hard to disagree with him based on just his resume. We would see Gabriel Iglesias or Fluffy backstage with Kathy Kelly promoting his new special. The New Day would interrupt him and berate him and tell him nobody wants to watch this, nobody cares, talking about how they haven't been able to talk about their side of the things with Big E. But nobody really wants to hear about that. Nobody really cares. Alpha Academy would come and interrupt them, show some love to Fluffy, have his back. And that would be it for that segment right there. We would also get a segment with the tribal chief, Roman Reigns, and Paul Heyman talking about they need to celebrate his win. And they give us a date of January 27th and close the door on WWE 2K25. So I'm assuming we will get a celebration for the acknowledgement of the OTC, as well as announcement for WWE 2K25. Following that, we would go to Hulk Hogan arriving and getting absolutely booed out of the arena. He said nothing special. It was all about his beer, all about Netflix, whatever. I didn't really care to listen. I was more interested in the fact that the whole arena was booing him by the time he finished with whatever he was saying. It was hilarious. I don't think he expected that at all, and he came out and was just booed off stage. Hogan is a legend, right? But it's time to move on from Hogan. We don't need Hogan. We don't need Hogan anymore. Hogan needs us. Hogan needs the fans. Hogan needs WWE to stay relevant. He's latched himself on to Donald Trump just to stay relevant. We don't need him around anymore. And if anything, that showed that the fans don't want him around anymore. So I don't think we'll see Hogan again. I hope not, at least. You know, he said he wanted to come back and do a couple programs. And if WWE and Netflix are watching the product, which the execs were there, they saw it, they were part of it. Hogan does not need to be on programming. But moving on, the main event, we had Seth Rollins versus CM Punk in a feud that I think we will probably get a little bit more out of. They had the best match of the night. This was like a shoot fight. They were fighting, like they were hitting each other hard. They were throwing each other into things. They were slamming each other down. They were, bows to face. It was a real shoot fight. And it was so much fun to watch. It was so good. Seth Rollins looked great. CM Punk looked great. They both walked away looking good. Even though CM Punk would take the win, they both walked away just as strong as they left. Neither one of them looks any weaker out of this, which is exactly what you want out of a, angry, fiery feud like this. I think this was great. This is a great match. I don't think this is the end of the story for these two. I think there's a lot to unpack with these two, and I think we'll get that, in the coming weeks. It might not be until they've kind of done the pilot things for Netflix, kind of get people used to the champions, get people used to who's the top dogs, right? Like they had SmackDown Superstars on Raw this week. They're getting people used to, this is who Raw is, this is what Raw is. Once that's done, I think post Rumble, we'll probably get another CM Punk and Seth Rollins thing. I don't know what we'll get, but we'll probably get something because this feud is fiery. This feud is good. It's fantastic. They would hit each other's finishers on each other. CM Punk would do the curb stomp. Seth Rollins would do the GTS. CM Punk would finish the match with a double GTS, showing that he had to put Rollins down. It was great. If you could only watch one match, this is the match you should watch. Because I think this has the most short/long-term story elements in it. And what's going to probably be a narrative in the future, in the very near future, especially on Raw, with Roman and the Ulafala and the Tribal Chief and Solo and all that. That's all been on SmackDown all year. I don't know if they're continuing this on SmackDown. They have not announced a single thing about it yet. So we will have to see, unless the whole bloodline has been moved to Raw, which I wouldn't be surprised, as Netflix wants the biggest draw on their network, and bloodline categorically is the biggest draw. So we'll see what happens. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, match of the night. Go watch it. If you got 30 minutes, turn it on, tune in. Great match. And capped off pretty decent episode. Like, I really can't be mad at this episode. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I've watched it twice. If I didn't enjoy it, I probably wouldn't watch it twice. But yeah, we are looking at a similar structure Raw next week with the Intercontinental Championship Finals for Dakota Kai and Lyra Valkyria. Then we'll get into Sheamus versus Kaiser, questionably Penta versus Gable, and then Damian Priest and Finn Balor in a street fight. I think we're in for a great Raw tonight. I look forward to seeing what kind of story elements move forward, what they kind of leave behind for a little bit, what the plan is in the future, because this will be the telltale Raw. This will tell us, is this what we can expect for the rest of the year, or is this something that we're just doing for now? Like if we start seeing more backstage segments, or are we just going to see celebrities the whole time? But that's it for last week. Thank you so much for watching or listening if this is on your preferred prod. But that would be it for last week. Thank you so much for watching or listening if this is on your preferred podcast platform. I really appreciate it. This is the first episode. We'll be doing Raw, NXT, and Smackdown every single week. Plus, maybe a random episode here and there on Wednesdays. So, we'll see what happens. Raw tonight looks really good. And if you enjoyed this, make sure to like and subscribe. But I'm Blackhawk, and this is In Case You Missed It Wrestling. Signing off. See you tomorrow. Peace.